When the Starjammer docked at the bustling trade port of Virith Station, no one paid much attention to the battered cargo pod limping in under tow. Among the swirl of dockhands, engineers, and bureaucratic officials, the alien crew of the Yoldar vessel simply passed over a data slate, their disdain barely concealed. Pod 3 contains specimen expired or beyond aid. Do with it what you will, said Commander Renark with a resigned flick of her pale, six-fingered hand. Her head fronds shifted in agitation as she avoided the pod's direction entirely, as though the mere sight of it might stir memories best left buried. The station officer, a squat being with melon-like features, glanced up from the slate. No reclamation fee. Consider it a donation, Renark muttered, her voice sharp. You'll find no appetite among the Yoldar for salvaging this disaster. Inside the pod, nestled behind a haze of stasis fields and tangled diagnostics, lay the so-called specimen half-feline, half-reptilian, and entirely hostile. It had been an unintended trophy from a botched hunting expedition on Galeris IV. The Xelvian Fangbeast had thrashed and fought through transit, leaving 3 Yoldar with fractured bones and a bruised sense of pride before collapsing in its final struggle. To the Yoldar, the creature was an emblem of wasted effort and unwelcome liability. Scans showed ruptured organs, splintered bones, and an erratic metabolic state that defied even their advanced med tech. They had deemed it hopeless and left it to the care or negligence of Virith Station. It was in this scene of quiet dismissal that Dr. Hal Riggan entered. Hal didn't inspire awe on first impression. He was of middling height, perpetually rumpled in a lab coat that had seen better centuries, and wore glasses that never seemed to sit quite right on his nose. His dark brown hair carried the look of someone who tussled with a pillow more often than a comb. Yet beneath the unassuming exterior was a man known for doing the impossible and infuriating people in the process. So let me get this straight, Hal said, peering at the pod while the station official rattled off a half-hearted report. There's a Xelvian Fangbeast in there, injured, maybe dying, and no one's even considering helping it. The official offered a half shrug, half squish. It's not neglect, Dr. Riggan. It's pragmatism. Treatment's expensive, prognosis is grim, and most importantly, it's a Fangbeast. Dangerous even on a good day. Best to let it go quietly. Hal folded his arms, glaring at the pod, as if willing it to contradict the official's bleak indifference. Through the stasis haze, the faint outline of the creature's massive form was visible, a hulking frame curled awkwardly, as though even unconsciousness brought no peace. That's ridiculous, Hal said, finally, his tone brimming with defiance. Every creature has value. If no one else will help it, I will. The official blinked, his bulbous eyes wide. It's not a matter of doctor, this isn't a stray crinhawk. It's a creature that could, and I stress, will eat you alive. Hal flashed a lopsided grin. Good thing I've got a winning bedside manner. Now are you opening that pod, or am I getting a crowbar? After a long silence, the official relented with a sigh that sounded like deflating bagpipes. With a flick of a tentacled arm, he triggered the release. The pod hissed open, its stasis fields disengaging with a flicker of pale blue light, revealing the Fangbeast in full. Even Hal, who prided himself on an iron stomach, felt a pang of unease. The creature was battered beyond recognition, scales bruised and torn, a jagged wound exposing raw muscle down its side. Its chest heaved in shallow, labored breaths, and one of its 6 legs twitched feebly. You sure about this? Doctor, the official asked nervously. Hal knelt beside the beast, his movements slow and deliberate. Yeah, I'm sure, he spoke softly as he retrieved a scanner from his bag, his voice more a murmur than a statement. Easy, big guy. I'm here to help. One slitted eye cracked open. Its amber gaze met his, raw with pain and mistrust. The creature bared its teeth in a weak snarl, but the effort cost it dearly, its head lolling back to the floor. Hal winced. Yeah, I wouldn't trust me either. But if you want to make it out of here, you're going to have to let me work. The scanner hummed as it passed over the creature's injuries, the readout painting a grim picture: ruptured organs, compound fractures, and dangerously low hydration. Hal muttered under his breath, the glint in his eyes sharpening. Tough customer. But I've worked miracles on worse. Well, maybe not worse. For the next several hours, Hal's world narrowed to a single focus. With hands moving in practiced precision, he stabilized vital functions, set fractured limbs, and administered an eclectic cocktail of medications. Every tool in his kit, some standard, some decidedly improvised, found its use. By the time Hal finished, the creature's breathing had steadied, and its wild desperation had ebbed. It wasn't healed, not by a long shot, but it was alive, and that alone was victory. Hal leaned back on his heels, exhaling deeply. There. That's a start. We'll get you through this, big guy. Across the bay, the Oldar crew had been watching in stunned silence. Commander Renark lingered at the edge of the crowd, her pale features unreadable as she studied the human's work. Finally, she spoke, her tone low but clear. "Humans," she muttered, her voice tinged with bemused resignation. "Always meddling in what they don't understand." But even she couldn't deny the result. For the next few days, Virith Station hummed with gossip about the human vet and his unlikely patient. It wasn't every day someone attempted to save a Xelvian Fangbeast, let alone manage to stabilize it. The alien dockworkers whispered warily as they passed the station's veterinary clinic, their glances full of equal parts curiosity and dread. Inside the clinic, Hal had commandeered an entire wing for what he called the Fangbeast Recovery Zone. The once silent space now buzzed with activity as Hal darted between monitors, equipment, and a growing pile of empty coffee canisters. He'd barely slept since the pod arrived, but he hardly noticed. The Fangbeast, whom Hal had nicknamed Rook, had taken to watching him with a quiet intensity. The creature still couldn't stand, but its breathing was steadier, and its once glazed eyes now tracked Hal's every movement. "Looking better every day," Rook Hal said, adjusting a biostim patch along the creature's flank. The creature rumbled softly, the sound resonating through the enclosure like a low, rolling thunder. "You're insane," said Yex, the clinic's chief administrator. The starfish-like alien loomed in the doorway, one briny appendage gripping a data slate. "You've requisitioned enough supplies to fund an entire wing of trauma wards, and you've hijacked my facility for this." Yex gestured at Rook, who responded with a toothy yawn that sent a shiver through Yex's gelatinous limbs. Hal didn't look up. "Call it an investment in interspecies goodwill." Yex's tendrils flailed in exasperation. "Goodwill won't pay the grocery bill. Do you have any idea how much meat that thing's consumed in 3 days? The quartermaster's threatening a formal complaint." Hal waved dismissively. "Put it on my tab." "You don't have a tab." "Then start one." Yex groaned, muttering something about reckless humans as they sloshed away. Hal chuckled and turned back to Rook. "See? You're already making friends." As Rook's recovery progressed, so did the station's growing unease. The Fangbeast's ability to lift its massive head and emit a low, guttural growl was enough to send most staff scurrying. Yet Hal remained unfazed, greeting each new milestone with the giddy enthusiasm of a parent watching their kid take their first steps. Not everyone shared his optimism. "This is a mistake," Commander Renark said, her voice sharp as she stood in the clinic's observation room. Her pale fronds twitched in agitation as she stared through the reinforced glass at Rook's enclosure. "You're throwing resources at a creature that can't be trusted. It's an apex predator. Its only instinct is to kill." Hal leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You say instinct, I say circumstance. Rook didn't ask to be yanked off his planet and stuffed into a stasis pod. If he's angry, it's because the universe gave him every reason to be." Renark's eyes narrowed. "You're projecting. That thing is not some misunderstood stray." Hal shrugged. "Maybe. But if you're so sure I'm wrong, why are you here?" The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it, her expression unreadable. Without another word, she turned and left, her boots clicking sharply against the clinic's polished floor. 2 weeks in, the breakthrough came. Hal was adjusting Rook's medications when the creature stirred. Slowly it shifted its weight, its massive limbs trembling as it attempted to stand. Hal froze, his breath caught in his throat. "Easy, big guy," he murmured. "One step at a time." Rook's claws scraped against the enclosure floor as he pushed himself upright. His injured leg wobbled but held, and for the first time the Fangbeast stood at full height. Hal grinned, his exhaustion melting away in the glow of triumph. Behind him, Yex and a handful of station staff watched from the observation window. One of them, a lanky alien with bright blue eyes, let out a low whistle. "I can't believe it. That thing's actually walking." "Walking now," Yex grumbled. "Eating us out of house and home forever." Rook turned his head toward the window, his amber eyes locking onto the onlookers. The staff scattered like startled prey, leaving only Yex to mutter indignantly as they fled. Hal laughed, patting Rook's flank. "Scaring people already? You're a natural." The celebration didn't last long. That evening, Hal received an unexpected visitor, a sleek, dark-uniformed representative from the Galactic Wildlife Authority. Her presence was announced by the clinic's automatic doors hissing open, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy boots on the tile. "Dr. Riggan," she said, her voice crisp and unyielding. "I am Officer Crane of the GBA. We need to talk." Hal set down the medical scanner he'd been holding and turned to face her. "Officer Crane, what brings you to my corner of the galaxy?" "The Xelvian Fangbeast," she replied. "Your actions, while noteworthy, constitute a violation of interstellar wildlife containment protocols. That creature is classified as a high-risk species. Its presence on this station is a breach of multiple safety regulations." Hal raised an eyebrow. "I saved its life. Shouldn't that count for something?" Crane's expression didn't waver. "What counts, Doctor, is that this station is ill-equipped to handle a creature of such magnitude and danger. The GBA cannot allow it to remain here. Effective immediately, the Fangbeast must be transferred to a secure facility." Hal's stomach sank. He knew what secure facility meant: a glorified prison where Rook would be studied, prodded, and ultimately forgotten. "There's another option," he said quickly. "I've already made arrangements to transport Rook to a sanctuary on Colores 7. It's equipped to handle apex predators and—" "That's irrelevant," Crane interrupted. "The creature's fate is not for you to decide. The GBA way will handle this matter from here." Hal clenched his fists. "With all due respect, officer, I've been handling this matter just fine without you." Crane's eyes narrowed. "Your defiance is noted. You have 24 hours to prepare the creature for transfer. Any resistance will result in legal repercussions." She turned on her heel and left, leaving Hal seething in the empty clinic. "Don't worry, Rook," he said softly, glancing at the Fangbeast. "We're not giving up that easily." The clinic hummed with quiet tension as Hal paced the Fangbeast recovery zone, his mind racing. 24 hours. That's all the time he had to prevent Rook from being carted off to some sterile containment facility where he'd never see open skies again. "You're planning something," Yex said, slithering into the room with a suspicious squelch. "That look on your face screams questionable decisions." Hal didn't break stride. "You're not wrong." Yex crossed their briny appendages. "Care to share before I'm complicit in your latest debacle?" Hal stopped, turning to face the starfish-like administrator. "I need a ship. Something with a decent cargo hold and just enough patchwork charm to fly under the radar." Yex's tendrils sagged in disbelief. "You're going to smuggle a Xelvian Fangbeast off this station? Past the GBA checkpoints? Are you insane?" Hal grinned. "Possibly." "I could lose my job," Yex spluttered, their appendages flailing in agitation. "Only if you get caught," Hal countered. "Which you won't. Because you're not involved. This is all me." Yex stared at him for a long moment, their multifaceted eyes narrowing. Finally, they let out a resigned sigh. "You're lucky I can't stand bureaucracy. I know someone who might help." The rust bucket wasn't much to look at more scrap heap than spaceship, but it was exactly what Hal needed. The ship's owner, Doran, was a gruff mechanic with a perpetual scowl and a weakness for ridiculous bets. Hal had patched up one of his pets, a particularly cantankerous Arvenian razorback, years ago, and now it was time to call in a favor. "You want me to do what Doran barked?" his arms crossed over his grease-streaked coveralls. "Loan me your ship," Hal said, his tone disarmingly casual. "Just for a quick run to Calora 7. I'll even bring it back with a full tank." Doran snorted. "And you think the Gobey's gonna let you waltz past their patrols with a live Fangbeast in tow?" "They won't if we don't try," Hal replied. "Besides, I've got a plan." Doran raised an eyebrow. "Your plans usually end in explosions." "Not always," Hal protested. "Just occasionally." The mechanic sighed, scrubbing a hand through his stubble. "You're lucky I owe you. But if this goes sideways, don't expect me to bail you out." "Wouldn't dream of it," Hal said with a grin. Smuggling Rook out of the clinic was the first hurdle. The creature, now strong enough to stand but still unsteady, followed Hal onto a hover sled with surprising compliance. Hal chalked it up to either mutual trust or sheer exhaustion. Either way, he wasn't about to question his luck. "You're sure this will work?" Yex asked as they maneuvered the sled into the station's maintenance tunnels, a labyrinthine network of dimly lit passageways that rarely saw visitors. "Pretty sure," Hal said. "Which is practically a guarantee." Yex groaned. "I can't believe I'm helping you with this." "Think of it as an adventure," Hal quipped. "More like a court-martial waiting to happen." They reached the docking bay without incident, though Hal's heart pounded every time they passed a surveillance node. The rust bucket was already prepped, its cargo hold open and waiting like the maw of a hungry beast. Doran stood by the ramp, arms folded. "You've got 10 minutes before the GBABA makes their rounds. After that, you're on your own." Hal nodded, guiding the sled up the ramp and into the ship's hold. He'd prepared a makeshift containment area lined with cushioning and reinforced panels, a far cry from a proper habitat. But it would do for the journey. "Easy, big guy," Hal said as Rook settled onto the padded floor. "Just a little turbulence, and we'll be on our way." The Fangbeast let out a low rumble, his golden eyes flicking to Hal with a look that could almost be described as resigned. The first leg of the escape went smoother than Hal had dared hope. The rust bucket powered out of Virith Station with only a cursory inspection at the docking bay. Doran's salvage hauler credentials seemed to satisfy the GDA checkpoint, and they were soon cruising through the void of open space. But Hal knew better than to celebrate early. An hour into the journey, the ship's alarm blared. Doran cursed, slamming his hand against the control panel. "We've got company. Gwei patrol ship on our tail." Hal peered over his shoulder at the monitor. The sleek vessel was closing fast, its weapons systems lighting up like an angry festival display. "Think they noticed us?" Hal asked, his voice only slightly strained. "Gee, you think?" Doran snapped. "What's your plan now, genius?" Hal's mind raced. Outrunning the patrol ship was out of the question. The rust bucket didn't do fast, but if they couldn't outrun it, maybe they could outsmart it. "I've got an idea," Hal said, already moving toward the cargo hold. "Oh no," Doran muttered. "Not one of your ideas." Rook's massive form loomed in the dim light of the cargo hold. Hal crouched beside him, speaking in the same calm, soothing tone he'd used during the creature's recovery. "Listen, buddy," Hal began. "We've got a bit of a situation. There's a patrol ship out there, and they're not exactly thrilled about you being here, but I think we can give them a reason to back off." The Fangbeast tilted his head, his amber eyes glinting with curiosity. Hal took it as a good sign. "I need you to look scary," Hal said, pulling open the containment panels to give Rook more space. "Really scary. Think apex predator having a bad day. Can you do that?" Rook rumbled softly, his tail flicking in a way that made Hal think he understood. Minutes later, the rust bucket powered down, coming to a halt as the GDA patrol ship docked. The hiss of the airlock was followed by the clatter of boots as a team of armed officers stormed aboard. "Captain Mellerick, Galactic Wildlife Authority," the leader announced, her voice sharp. "You are transporting a dangerous species without authorization. Surrender immediately." Hal stepped forward, hands raised in mock surrender. "No problem, Captain. Just one thing, you might want to meet my traveling companion first." Before Mellerick could respond, a low, guttural growl reverberated through the ship. Rook emerged from the shadows, his towering form framed by the dim light. He bared his teeth in a display that sent a shiver through the airlock. The officers froze, their weapons wavering. "That's a Xelvian Fangbeast," one officer whispered. "And it looks hungry." Hal smirked. "I wouldn't recommend shooting. He doesn't like loud noises." Melrick's expression faltered for the briefest moment. Then she sighed, signaling her team to lower their weapons. "You're insane, Doctor." "Insane enough to save his life," Hal replied. "Now, if you don't mind, we've got a sanctuary to reach." Melrick glared at him but finally relented. "You have 24 hours to reach your destination. After that, I'm filing a full report." "Deal," Hal said, flashing his most disarming grin. The rust bucket streaked through space toward Calora 7, the patrol ship's stern warning still ringing in Hal's ears. He sat in the cramped cockpit beside Doran, his adrenaline ebbing just enough to let fatigue creep in. "You've got some guts, I'll give you that," Doran said, steering the ship with practiced ease. "But guts don't mean much if the sanctuary won't take him." "They'll take him," Hal replied, leaning back in his chair. "Rook's a miracle case. The staff at Calora 7 will fall over themselves just for the chance to study him." "And if they don't?" Doran asked, his gaze skeptical. Hal didn't answer. He didn't need to. Failure wasn't an option. Calora 7 was everything Hal had imagined: a lush, verdant world teeming with wildlife and wide-open spaces. The sanctuary's landing pad sat nestled among rolling hills, its perimeter lined with translucent biodomes that shimmered in the sunlight. The sight filled Hal with a bittersweet sense of relief. Rook's journey was almost over. The Fangbeast stirred as the ship descended, his golden eyes flicking to Hal. The connection between them had grown over the past weeks, a bond forged in trust and shared survival. Hal crouched beside him, placing a hand on the creature's scaled flank. "Almost there, big guy," he said softly. "Time to meet your new home." As the rust bucket touched down, a team of sanctuary staff approached the cargo hold. Their leader, a towering insectoid biologist named Belrex, clicked their mandibles in greeting as Hal stepped onto the ramp. "Dr. Riggan," Belrex said, their multifaceted eyes gleaming, "your reputation precedes you. We received your transmission, but I must admit I was skeptical. A living Xelvian Fangbeast? It's almost too extraordinary to believe." "You'd better believe it," Hal replied, gesturing toward Rook. "Meet the extraordinary himself." Rook lumbered out of the cargo hold with cautious determination, his massive frame casting a long shadow over the sanctuary staff. Gasps of awe rippled through the group as the Fangbeast surveyed his surroundings, his nostrils flaring to take in the unfamiliar scents. "He's magnificent," Belrex murmured, their antennae twitching with excitement. "And alive. Truly remarkable." "Barely," Hal said. "He's been through hell, but he's a fighter. I'll leave you my notes: diet, medications, recovery milestones. He still needs careful monitoring." Belrex nodded, their gaze never leaving Rook. "You have my word. We'll ensure his continued recovery." As the staff guided Rook toward one of the sanctuary's biodomes, Hal felt a pang of bittersweet pride. The creature he'd fought so hard to save was finally where he belonged. Still, letting go wasn't easy. The sanctuary's observation deck offered a panoramic view of the biodomes, and Hal found himself there later that evening, staring out at the one housing Rook. The Fangbeast moved slowly but purposefully through his new habitat, his dark scales gleaming in the artificial twilight. Feeling sentimental, Doran's voice broke the quiet as he leaned against the railing. "Something like that," Hal admitted, his gaze never wavering. "I've been so focused on keeping him alive, I didn't really think about what it'd feel like to say goodbye." Doran snorted. "You're acting like you're never coming back. Face it, Riggan, this isn't your last crazy rescue. It's just the warm-up." Hal chuckled. "You're probably right." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the sanctuary's biodome systems the only sound. The next morning, Hal prepared to depart. Belrex met him at the landing pad, their data slate brimming with notes and observations from their first night with Rook. "Your Fangbeast is adjusting remarkably well," Belrex said. He's already exploring the habitat and showing interest in his surroundings. It's extraordinary. He's not just mine, Hal replied, smiling faintly. He's his own beast now. Belrex extended a limb in a gesture of respect. You've done something truly remarkable, Dr. Rigan. Should we ever encounter a case as impossible as this, we will call on you. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Hal said, shaking the biologist's limb. But if it does, you know where to find me. As the rust bucket lifted off, Hal took one last look at the sanctuary. Rook stood at the edge of his enclosure, his golden eyes following the ship's ascent. For a brief moment, Hal swore he saw the Fangbeast lower his head, a gesture of acknowledgement, maybe even gratitude. Take care, big guy, Hal murmured, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. The stars stretched into lines as the rust bucket jumped to hyperspace. Hal leaned back in his seat, exhaustion finally catching up with him. So Doran said, smirking, what's next for Dr. Impossible? Hal grinned, closing his eyes. Let's find out after a nap. Wake me if you find another apex predator in need of rescuing. Somewhere in the sanctuary's biodomes, a Xelvian Fangbeast prowled free, a living testament to stubborn determination, improbable hope, and the human refusal to give up, even when the odds were stacked sky-high.